Welcome back, Twisters, and hello there, Sharks fans. Nick here with some 30th anniversary content, and I'm doing this through the course of this season. So today we're going to be talking about the 30 greatest San Jose Sharks trades and acquisitions, also like undrafted free agents and that sort of thing. I've already made a 3-part special on the 30 greatest draft picks. I sincerely recommend you check this out. But for this one, I'm just going to be talking to you directly right here. So we've got a countdown 30 to 1. Before we get started, make sure if you haven't already, you click that red subscribe button down below and the notifications bell, even if you aren't a Sharks fan, because I do cover the league at large. But nonetheless, I am a Sharks fan, so about 20-25% of my content is focused on Team Teal. So let's get started, ladies and gents. We're going to start number 30. Actually, you know what? Before we get started, I'll name a few guys who actually aren't on this list, not in the top 30. They're a little bit outside of it. Of course, I want to know your thoughts down in the comments. And some of these players, I didn't actually get to watch so much growing up. So just a few players that I want to acknowledge before we get into the top 30. We've got Arundel, Erik Karlsson, Teemu Selanne, Nicholas Sundstrom, Joel Ward, Marcus Sorensen, Rob Goodrow, Tony Granato, Stefan Matteau, Jeff Norton, Jeremy Roenick, and Manny Malhotra, one of my favorite Sharks, even though he only played for 1 year there. So we're going to begin this countdown at number 30. And the first person we're going to talk about is Kelly Kezio. He's actually third all-time in assists per game. He led the team in scoring one season, the very horrendous 92-93 season, in which the Sharks, I think, set the regular season record for losses. He had a career-high 78 points, or he tied a career high that year. In 126 games in Teal, Kezio notched 37 goals and 78 assists for 115 points. At number 29, I have Ulf Dahlen. He played 161 games for the Sharks in 4 seasons. He had 41 goals, 52 assists for 93 points. And in 25 career postseason games, he had 11 goals. Now, Dahlen played during the early era for the Sharks like Kezio did, and he was pretty instrumental when the team, I think, knocked off the Calgary Flames in 1995. I think he had an overtime goal one of those postseason games. At number 28, kind of a recent unsung hero for the Sharks, I've got Melka Carlson. Yes, the other Carlson. So he actually appeared in 396 games over 6 seasons. He notched 60 goals, 52 assists for 112 points. And most recently, he helped the Sharks for most of the course of the season in 19 and 20 actually be number 1 in penalty kills. So he was a big penalty killer, good defensive forward. Had some scoring upside once in a while. Very instrumental in the team's 2016-17 run, I would say. He was probably the most consistent player there. Number 27. This one will be interesting for sure. I have Danny Heatley. So Heatley only appeared in 2 seasons for the Sharks. He had 65 goals and 81 assists for 146 points and a plus 22 rating in 162 games played. He had 39 goals in his first season as a Shark. And really, out of the star players who appeared briefly for the Sharks, like look at Erik Karlsson so far, Teemu Selanne, and you could even lump in Jeremy Roenick. I think Heatley's had the best run of those players there as a Shark. So he certainly belongs on this list. And I got to see him actually score a couple of hat tricks in person. So that was pretty awesome. At number 26, and he kind of gets a little bit lost in the fold, I have Steve Shields. He kind of came in between Arturs Irbe and Yevgeny Nabokov. Nonetheless, he had some pretty respectable numbers. He appeared in 125 games over the course of 3 seasons, had a .914 save percentage, and a 2.44 goals against. Now, this was during the dead puck era, so those numbers aren't spectacular by any means, but they're still pretty respectable. At number 25, I have Gary Suter, a defenseman. So he finished his career with the Sharks. He was in his mid-30s and played 3 seasons in San Jose. In 227 games, he had 22 goals and 79 assists for 101 points and a plus 28 rating and an average time on ice of 21 minutes and 37 seconds. Pretty good to before you hang him up. So Gary Suter, number 25. Number 24, it's the other Thornton, Scott Thornton. In 5 years with the Sharks, over 342 games, he was certainly a good depth piece. He had 77 goals, 70 assists for 147 points. At number 23, and a fan favorite for some of you out there, Kyle Mclaren. Definitely a stay-at-home defenseman who could throw a hip check like nobody else. So, Mclaren in 302 games, 12 goals and 71 assists for just 83 points, but nonetheless, he was good in his own zone. And now I think he actually appears on a podcast with a couple of Sharks fans as well. So maybe Google that when you're done with this video. Actually, watch some more Sharks videos on this channel, then Google that. Number 22. Didn't really get to watch this guy play with the Sharks because he was there at the very beginning. That is Jeff Audgers. And the numbers by no means are glamorous, but really when you think about toughness and physicality, of course, and fighting and committing a bunch of penalties, Audgers is the guy who comes to mind. I know Link Gates would be in that conversation as well, but initially the Sharks had some rough, tough players out there, and Audgers was at the forefront of that. He appeared in 334 games with the Sharks. He had 48 goals and 34 assists for 82 points and 1,001 penalty minutes. He was actually also captain for 2 seasons, so tip the cap there. Number 21, and a guy who I think is a little bit under the radar here, is Nils Ekman. Now, acquiring Ekman was actually one of Doug Wilson's first moves as general manager, and he was an excellent secondary scorer for the team despite only playing for 2 years. He, in 159 games played, had 43 goals, 69 assists for 112 points, and a plus-minus of plus 50. So that's just in 2 years right there. He was actually 11th in Selke voting in 2004, so that's pretty good for somebody that not too many people around the league were familiar with. At number 20, now this is where recency bias comes in. I've got Barkley Goodro. Barkley Goodro was a fringe NHL player for a few years there, and then of course in 2019, he made his mark on the Sharks franchise history by scoring the overtime winner in Game 7 against the Vegas Golden Knights in the first round of the playoffs there. That is a goal that will be remembered forever. The stories will be, legends will be told and songs will be sung for Barkley. He finished that with, or he followed up that year with really the best season of his career. He was playing excellent for the Sharks. He was probably the best player over the course of that season. And then we traded him, of course, to get some value for that. And then he won the Stanley Cup with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and we're very, very proud of him for that. In 268 games with the Sharks, he had 26 goals, 45 assists for 71 points, and won 52.4% of his faceoffs. Now, a teammate of his, and somebody else who scored a big goal, is none other than the Finnish sensation, Jonas Donskoi. So Donskoi, now, he never really put it all together over the full course of a season. He got injured at times, he'd get knocked off the puck, but nonetheless, Donskoi, defensively a sound player, very creative with the puck as well, and of course he scored one of the biggest goals in franchise history in 2016 in Game 3 against the Pittsburgh Penguins in the Stanley Cup Finals. So Jonas, we will always remember you for that, of course, and we wish you all the best in Colorado. In 283 games with the Sharks, he had 44 goals, 77 assists for 122 points, and a plus 19 rating. He also had 6 goals and 6 assists in that 2016 playoff run there. At number 18, and I think this is another player who didn't get enough credit for what he did, Scott Nichol. You want to talk about the toughest pound-for-pound players to ever play in the NHL? Scott Nichol needs to be in that conversation, at least in terms of, in this century. The guy was 5'8", but he would stand in against guys who were 6 inches taller than he was. Yeah, he only scored 26 points for the Sharks in his 2 seasons, but he won 60% of his faceoffs. So he won almost 800 of them at a 60% clip. That's insanely good right there. And again, just one of the better kind of sandpaper players that you would find around the league. I wish that we had him for more than those 2 years, but he certainly made them worthwhile. Now we get into a couple of players who didn't have the best numbers by any means, but they are certainly significant for just coming to this franchise in the first place. So I'll start with number 17, and that's Doug Wilson. So Doug Wilson, Hall of Fame player, many, many years in Chicago, then came over to the Sharks for their first season as a franchise, was injured with his time in Teal, only played in 86 games over those 2 seasons, 12 goals and 36 assists. But of course, with Doug Wilson, he wanted to stay in California and he wanted to stay with the franchise. And in 2003, he became general manager. Of course, he's made some bad moves, but nonetheless, Doug Wilson has made some pretty goddamn good moves. And the Sharks as a whole have only missed the playoffs twice since 2003. And Doug Wilson, as a result of that, is the second longest tenured GM in the NHL. David Boyle for the Predators is number 1. Number 16, kind of like Wilson, again, not an illustrious career, but he's certainly made impact on this organization, Jamie Baker. So Bakes was with the franchise toward the beginning of things. In 186 games, he had 35 goals, 27 assists for 62 points. But I'm sure, as some of you know, Jamie Baker scored what is maybe the biggest goal in franchise history. In 1994, the Sharks had a terrible start to the year. They somehow made it to the playoffs, though. And in the first round, they faced the number 1 seeded Red Wings, the Steve Yzerman, Sergei Fyodorov-led Red Wings. And the Sharks upset them, and Jamie Baker scored the winning goal in Game 7. Of course, Baker is certainly known for his time with the Sharks broadcast team. He, for 15 years, was part of the radio and the TV broadcast teams there. And just a great guy, Certainly his impact on the game of hockey is certainly appreciated in terms of mental health awareness. Now, at number 15 and 14 are teammates of Baker's with the Sharks. And again, they had brief times in San Jose, but nonetheless, they left quite the impact for their tenure there. And that's Igor Larianov at number 15 and Sergei Makarov at number 14. You could flip-flop them if you want, I guess. But both of these guys, part of the wave of defectors from the Soviet Union there. And just the two of them together, I never got to really watch them, but their creativity and that sort of Soviet style of play, it translated fairly well at times with the Sharks here. So Larianov, in 97 games with San Jose, he had 23 goals and 59 assists for 82 points and a plus 11 rating. But then again, looking back at playing with Jamie Baker and that team in 1994, in those 14 playoff games during that run, Larianov had 18 points, so very productive there. And his teammate Sergei Makarov in 123 regular season games with the Sharks, he had 40 goals, 52 assists for 92 points. And in those same playoffs, he had 8 goals in those 14 games. So the guy, he just kept scoring and scoring. He couldn't be stopped out there. At number 13, a guy who I also appreciated, kind of like Scott Nichol, is Mike Greer. I think they actually played together. So Mike Greer came to the Sharks in 2006 and played 3 seasons. In 221 games played, he had 35 goals, 43 assists for 98 points, and 92 block shots. And again, Greer, sandpaper player, was always the first guy out there to kill a penalty, was entertaining to watch, trying to score a shorthanded goal, would definitely get out there and fight if he had to. Just a great hard-nosed player right there. Only 3 seasons. I know he had a great career in Buffalo as well, but definitely one of my favorite Sharks players right after the lockout, I'd say. At number 12, I have Johann Garpenlov. Garpenlov, in 184 games, had 46 goals, 86 assists for 132 points. He was part of the Sharks' first season as a franchise, and in their second season as a franchise, he was second in scoring, so he put up a career-high 66 points. He also added 10 points in 14 playoff games, alongside Larianov and Makarov and Baker in 1994. At number 11, I have Dilly. I got Brendan Dillon. Now, he was actually traded in exchange for Jason Demers during the 14-15 season. Demers had a pretty good season, and so has Brendan Dillon. So he took some time to develop with the Sharks, and we used to point the finger at him quite a little bit. But with physical play and just, his will to progress, Brendan Dillon emerged as a good top 4 defenseman in the NHL. In 439 games played with the Sharks, he had 13 goals and 75 assists for 88 points. So that was over the course of 6 seasons. He also was part of 60 playoff games, so quite the postseason pedigree for Dilly there. And of course, he was a fan favorite, known as probably the most approachable player off the ice, or at least that's what I had heard. So certainly gives him some brownie points there. And now we are into our top 10. And kicking off number 10, we've got Auntie Niemi. Now, what was interesting about Niemi was he beat the Sharks in the conference finals in 2010 with the Blackhawks and then won the Stanley Cup, of course. And then after that, the Sharks got a little creative. So they first targeted Niklas Hjalmarsson. So they signed him to an offer sheet, or they, submitted an offer sheet there. The Blackhawks matched that, but because they were in some sort of cap management trouble, Niemi was a free agent. So the Sharks picked him up. And even though he was never going to take them to a Stanley Cup, his postseason numbers with San Jose weren't very good. he was really good in the regular season, actually. So, Niemi, in 296 games with the Sharks, had a 2.40 goals against, a 917 save, a quality start percentage of .554. That's good. That's respectable. And he had 25 shutouts in those 5 years. His best season came in 2013 when he posted a 2.16 goals against, a 924 save percentage, and finished third for the Vezina. At number 9, and even though this stirs a little bit of controversy, I'll do my best to defend this. I've gone Evander Kane. First point that I'll make here is that he's first all-time in goals scored per game. In 158 regular season games, Kane has scored 66 goals and 54 assists for 120 points. So that's a 30-goal plus clip for an 82-game season right there. And yeah, I know the penalty minutes and the antics, especially off the ice. But Evander Kane added things that the Sharks needed at that time. Speed. Evander Kane's a very fast player. He can play penalty kill, actually. He was really good at that last year, apparently, and now he's killing penalties now. And just toughness. Somebody who's not afraid to, hit back and stick up for his players. So Kane has been instrumental in that for sure. At number 8, I've got Vincent Dampoose. Dampoose had a great career, kind of a player that we don't talk about all that much. I think he actually won the Cup with the Canadiens back in 93. Came to the Sharks in the 1998-99 season, and in 6 years, he had 385 games played, 92 goals, 197 assists for 289 points and a plus 14 rating. Among one of their most dependable scorers alongside somebody else I'll talk about in a little bit. At number 7, I have the Latvian sensation, Arturs Irbe. So Irbe had 2 standout seasons in his career. Not the best numbers by any means, but in 2002, he helped backstop the Hurricanes to the Stanley Cup Finals right there. And in the 1993-94 season, I've talked about this a few times now, he appeared in 74 games and helped the Sharks knock off the Detroit Red Wings in the first round there. He actually finished 5th for the Vezina that year too, which is pretty good for a team that's only their 3rd year as a franchise. So in 183 games with the Sharks, he posted a 3.47 goals against and an 889 save. Now, keep in mind, scoring was still fairly high at that time until just after that, because that's when the trap was introduced. So Irbe at number 7, and we have another goaltender at number 6, and that's Martin Jones. Of course, say what you will about his past couple of seasons, but nonetheless, Jones has had a couple of terrific achievements with this club. He was traded for next to nothing, essentially, with only 34 games under his belt, but he had a great first season with the Sharks in 2015-2016. Of course, the Sharks went all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. In the postseason that year, Jonesy had 2.16 goals against, a 923 save. He had a 932 save in the Stanley Cup Finals against the Penguins, and on 3 of those 6 games, he made over 40 saves. Really, Jones was the only reason why this wasn't a sweep. You could pretty much chalk it up to his play in net right there. And, of course, in 2019, after being lit up, I think 3 of the 4 games against the Vegas Golden Knights, Jones came back, he bounced back, and in Game 6, he recorded a franchise record 58 saves in a postseason game. So Jones has certainly done a couple of pretty amazing things with San Jose. At number 5, and I think at one time he was named the sexiest man in Colorado, and that is Mike Ricci, an absolute cornerstone for this franchise in the late 1990s right there. He was a top 4 vote getter for the Selke Trophy in 3 consecutive seasons, all coming with the Sharks right there. In 529 games with San Jose, he had 101 goals, 162 assists for 263 points, and a plus 19 rating. He would up his game in the postseason, scoring 33 points in 59 playoff games, and he's been part of the franchise after his career for quite some time now. I think he's a development coach right now, but he's been behind the bench as an assistant coach before too. Number 4, I've got Dan Boyle. Great defenseman, great character as well. So he was traded alongside Brad Lukowich to the Sharks in exchange for Matt Carl, Ty Wishart, a first-round draft pick in 2009, and a fourth-round pick in 2010. Nonetheless, I think that Boyle certainly lived up to his capabilities with the Sharks. He played in teal for 6 years, 431 games, 68 goals, 201 assists for 269 points and over 25 minutes of average time on ice. He was a plus 19 rating. He also added 47 points in 68 playoff games, despite being a minus 13. But Boyle, for me, it was his toughness as well. It was the fact that even though he was only 5'11", he would scrap with guys who were 6'3", 6'4". I got to see it a couple times myself. This guy just did not take any ish from anybody out there. Dan Boyle was that guy. Yeah, I know he scored an own goal in the playoffs in 2010. Okay, number 3. Speaking of fellow defensemen out there, I've got Brent Burns. So I know the Burns he taketh and the Burns he giveth away, but nonetheless, Brent Burns has done some amazing things with the Sharks. He's already been here for a decade, which is crazy. So in 662 games with the Sharks, he has 155 goals and 356 assists for 511 points. He also has 59 points in 83 playoff games. Of course, Burns, most of the time he's played defense, but he's also been forward a couple of times as well. Nonetheless, I think that Burns has just been one of the most versatile players, regardless of position, that the NHL has seen in recent times. And of course, his personality, his beard, his appearance on Vikings, his ranch in Texas. I mean, this guy is larger than life, but he's just a down-to-earth, interesting individual. He's going to be a huge piece of the franchise, even when he's not playing for them, I think. And to think that Brent Burns came over to the Sharks in 2011 for Devin Setoguchi and Charlie Coyle. That was a pretty good acquisition, I gotta say. Number 2, and I know that I could have probably put Burns second, but for me, this guy needs to be number 2. It's Owen Nolan. Owen Nolan is the guy who I call the first great San Jose Shark. Owen Nolan could play power forward, he could score, he could fight. He was captain for the team from 1998 to 2003. Overall, he had 206 goals and 245 assists over 8 years, spanning 568 games, so 451 points right there. He also had 44 goals in the 1999-2000 season, which I think was second in the NHL. And I think the year after, he was on the cover of NHL 2001. And that same season, 1999-2000, the Sharks were an 8th seed, and they upset Chris Pronger and the St. Louis Blues, who were a 1 seed in the first round of the postseason right there. Also, Owen Nolan still lives in the area, and he owns Britannia Arms, which is one of San Jose's most well-known sports bars, and especially if you're a San Jose Sharks fan. And at number 1, and who else would it be? It's Jumbo Joe Thornton, who came to the organization in 2005 in exchange for Marco Sturm, Keith Primo, and Brad Stewart. I mean, a couple of good players there, but nonetheless, the Sharks got away with highway robbery right there, and I know they never won a cup with Thornton, but nonetheless, he had a profound impact on his teammates and the franchise as a whole. In 1,104 games as a Shark, Jumbo scored 1,055 total points. That puts him comfortably second all-time in points, only behind Patrick Marleau, who was drafted right after him in the 1997 draft right there. But of course, we all know Jumbo for what impact he had when he first came to the Sharks in 05-06. In 58 games, he had 92 points. And of course, Jonathan Chichu, one of the biggest one-hit wonders in sports history, you could even say, won the Rocket Richard. In fact, I think Chichu scored 49 goals in 58 games with Jumbo there. So that's absurd. And as a result, Joe Thornton won the Art Ross, so he won the scoring title there. And of course, he won the Hart Trophy as the league's most valuable player. He actually finished in the top 10 for the Hart 4 times, including his renaissance season of 2015-2016. At the age of 36, he was 5th in the NHL in scoring, and he was 5th in Hart voting. So anyway, that's going to do it for my countdown for the 30 greatest Sharks trades and acquisitions and signings, free agents, and whatnot. But I want to know your thoughts down in the comments below, and stick around because we're going to have more San Jose Sharks 30th anniversary content on this channel, including the 30 greatest Sharks, as well as the 30 greatest moments in Sharks franchise history. I'm very excited for that one. Thanks so much for getting to the end of this video. It's been great having you here. Make sure if you enjoyed this video, show your support with a thumbs up, subscribe. I'll catch you later for more San Jose Sharks content. Catch you later, Twisters. Ciao.